Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Story number 1 starts in a rural driveway that tourists think is free parking. One man pulls in, ignores the homeowner, and then decides her dogs are the problem. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Entitled tourist thinks private property doesn't apply to him. I live in a pretty isolated area near a popular hiking trail, which means my driveway might as well be a free public rest stop in the eyes of clueless tourists. My property has 4 units, 2 Airbnbs, and 2 permanent residences. I'm one of the permanent ones. We've had every version of tourist behavior you can imagine. People pulling in to turn around, people sitting in their cars blocking our entrances to look up directions. And the worst ones of all, people who leave their cars in our private lot and go off hiking for hours. There's a perfectly good public parking area by the trailhead, but apparently walking an extra 30 seconds is too much for some folks. Our parking area is big and open, which only makes people assume it's fair game. It's not. There are several signs that clearly say private property, no public parking. On top of that, between myself and the other long-term residents, we have 5 dogs total. Mine are 3 goofy fluffballs who think every human is here to compliment them. The other resident has 2 equally friendly pups. We let them run in the lot because it's fenced and private, and honestly, it's the highlight of their day. If Airbnb guests have issues with dogs, I leash mine. But on a normal day, they roam and play under my supervision. So this afternoon, I open the door to let my dogs out and immediately see a random guy in the middle of our parking area. He's fiddling with snow chains, clearly making himself right at home. His kid, maybe 9 or 10, is standing next to the car. I call out politely, "Are you visiting someone here?" Nothing, no reaction. He doesn't even look at me. I ask again, louder this time, still nothing. Not even a, "Sorry, didn't hear you." Fine, I grab a Frisbee and throw it for one of my dogs. If he's going to pretend I don't exist, I'll return the favor. Suddenly, the silent stranger finds his voice. "Can you please leash your dogs?" he says. "We are afraid." "Are you visiting someone here?" I ask again. "No," he says, like it should be obvious. "I'm just taking the chains off." Then, "No," I answer. "I'm not leashing my dogs." His eyebrows jump. "We're afraid of dogs." "And this is my home," I tell him. "My dogs are on my private property. You're the one who wandered into my driveway." He shoots me a dirty look as if I've personally offended his ancestors, but says nothing. He finishes taking off the chains with dramatic sighs like the tragic hero of a very boring play. Then, just as he's about to get into his car, he turns and tosses out a passive-aggressive apology. "I'm sorry I asked you to leash your dogs," he says, dripping sarcasm. "We're just allergic and afraid." I look him dead in the eye. "You're on private property and trespassing. My dogs have every right to be here. Maybe think about where you're parking before demanding anything." He didn't respond to that, just climbed into his car, kid and all, and drove off without so much as a bye. Later, I posted about it on Facebook, mostly because I was still annoyed at being ignored twice and then treated like the villain for letting my own dogs run in my own yard. Someone immediately jumped in saying I was rude and unaccommodating. Unaccommodating to a trespasser on my land? For the record, my local laws only require dogs to be under control, which includes voice commands. They were obedient the entire time. The tourist had parked fully inside my driveway, essentially blocking the entrance. And once he told me he was afraid, I kept my dogs away from him. I didn't let them run up to him or bark at him. They stayed on the opposite side of the lot the entire time. Honestly, the thing that bothered me most was the way he ignored me until he wanted something. That's not fear, that's entitlement. When I got home the next day, there was a note taped to my door. His handwriting was barely legible, but the message basically said he would have been more comfortable if I had leashed my dogs, but he appreciated that I at least kept them away from him. So even the trespasser himself wasn't as offended as the people on Facebook pretending to be outraged on his behalf. I still stand by everything I said. If you wander onto private property without permission, you don't get to dictate the rules, especially to the person who actually lives there. The absolute audacity to wander onto someone's private property, ignore them when they speak to you, and then demand they change their behavior to suit your preferences is just crazy. It's a special kind of arrogance. And our second story. When a parking confrontation turns into petty genius. A few years ago, my mother-in-law flew in from across the country to visit my fiance, now wife, and me for a week. We live downtown in a cramped, noisy part of the city where parking is a kind of urban warfare, and our garage, unfortunately, opens directly into an alley beside a liquor store. Because of that, we've been blocked in more times than I can count. Delivery trucks, drunk drivers, people just stopping for a second, you name it. We've had our fair share of arguments out there, but nothing prepared us for the incident that happened during her visit. It was around 8 or 9 p.m. when we came home from dinner one evening. We turned down the alley toward our garage and immediately saw a car parked directly in front of it. Not just close, directly in front. The lights were off, no one inside. A second later, we spotted the owner coming out of the liquor store with a tall beer can in his hand. As soon as he saw us waiting in our car, he smirked, lifted the can like he was making a toast, and walked to his vehicle. Instead of leaving, he got in, cracked open the beer, took a long drink, and stared at us while laughing. My future mother-in-law looked horrified. My fiancé muttered, "Really? Tonight?" I sighed, got out of the car, and walked over. I kept my voice calm, honestly, painfully polite. I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of my future mother-in-law, and I was tired after a long day. "Hey man," I said, "you're blocking our garage. Could you move up a little so we can park?" He didn't even pretend to consider it. He took another drink and said, "Go F yourself. I'll leave when I feel like it." I blinked slowly and tried again, explaining that he only needed to pull forward a few feet. Instead of responding like a human adult, he got out of the car and stepped right into my space. I mean nose-to-nose, drunk alpha male posture, breath reeking of beer. "You heard me," he said. "I'll do what I want." I told him firmly that I wasn't looking for any trouble. I just wanted to get into my own home. He shoved me, not hard enough to knock me down, but definitely hard enough to show he wanted to fight. I didn't shove back. I just pulled out my phone, said, "All right, we're done," and called the police. While I was on the phone with dispatch, he moved even closer, deliberately brushing against me, trying to provoke something. I stepped back and put an arm out to keep space. He walked into my arm and immediately started screaming, "He assaulted me! He hit me! I need the police!" I just stared at him like, seriously? The police arrived within a minute. Perks of living downtown. The moment he saw them, his entire personality flipped. Suddenly, he was soft-spoken, distressed, and very concerned for his safety. He pointed at me dramatically and said, "Officers, he came at me. I was just sitting in my car and he threatened me." Luckily, my fiancé and mother-in-law had been watching everything from inside our car. They both got out and calmly told the officers exactly what happened. The officers told him he was illegally parked and needed to move immediately. He grumbled and rolled his eyes, but he started to get back in the car. Until one of the officers noticed the open beer can sitting in his cup holder. "Sir," the officer said, "step out of the vehicle." His face changed instantly. They breathalyzed him on the spot, but unfortunately for karma, he had finished the beer before stepping out, and his BAC was technically below the legal limit. They couldn't charge him with DUI. They couldn't arrest him. They could only warn him and force him to leave. Before he drove off, he leaned out the window, tossed something at me, and said, "You don't even know who you're messing with." Then he sped off into the night. The object he threw was a business card. Christopher, freelance graphic designer, website URL, phone number, the works. The next morning, I opened his website. He had his entire portfolio online, every project he'd ever done, plus a downloadable PDF resume with his full address, phone number, skill list, everything a person would need to apply to hundreds of jobs. So I did. Every lunch break, every evening, every moment I had a few spare minutes, I filled out job applications for him. McDonald's, Starbucks, Target, movie theaters, grocery stores, seasonal mall jobs, gas stations, warehouse helper, data entry, front desk at a gym. I applied everywhere. If the application process took less than 5 minutes, he was signed up. I used his real resume, his real phone number, his real qualifications. I didn't fabricate anything. I simply opened doors. Lots and lots of doors. I must have submitted close to 100 applications over a few weeks. I can only imagine what those phone calls sounded like. He'd answer, probably expecting a potential design client, and instead hear, "Hi, Christopher. We're calling about your application for a part-time fry cook position," or "We'd love to schedule an interview for our overnight stalker role," or "Are you still available to discuss the barista position?" He was extremely qualified for minimum wage work simply because anyone with a pulse generally is. A couple months later, I checked his website again, partly out of curiosity, partly out of lingering petty satisfaction. It was gone, completely taken down. Either he nuked it or moved everything to a private link. Some people learn lessons through conflict, some through embarrassment. And some through a sudden spike in interview requests from every fast food chain in the city. Kind of surprised that the apartment complex didn't have towing services on standby for this situation. You know, some tow company would gladly perch a truck nearby if they knew they could get 2 to 3 vehicles a night whenever someone wanted to illegally park and run in for a few beers. Also, nice petty revenge, OP. And our last story. She expected a free house from my mother's estate. She got handcuffs and a restraining order instead. When my mother died last year, everything felt like it had been scooped out of me with a dull spoon. She'd been sick for a long time, cancer that dragged on and drained everyone around her. I'm her only child, so all of the caretaking, paperwork, and end-of-life decisions fell on me. My wife helped as much as she could, but I handled the day-to-day, medications, doctors, bad news on repeat. When she finally passed, it was devastating. But there was at least one silver lining. I inherited her house. My wife and I had never been able to afford one. We'd been renting for years, constantly one financial crisis away from disaster. Owning my mom's house meant stability. It meant we finally had room for our kids, our bills eased up, and we could even save. Moving in felt bittersweet, but it was the first time in years that things started to feel safe. For the first few months, everything was quiet. Then Megan showed up. Megan is the daughter of my mom's best friend. They'd known each other since childhood. Megan's mother passed years ago, and my mom, being the nurturing type, always tried to fill that void for her. Megan and I grew up knowing each other, but we were never close. She always had a flair for dramatics, and even as teen, she played victim in every situation. She's the type who disappears for months and then resurfaces only when she needs something. But after my mom got sick, Megan suddenly began showing up more frequently. At the time, I chalked it up to grief for her mom and concern for mine. Now I'm not so sure. About a month ago, while I was cleaning the garage, I heard a car pull up into the driveway. When I stepped outside, I froze. It was Megan, car packed to the roof, 3 kids in the back and several boxes jammed in the trunk. She got out smiling like she just won the lottery. "Megan, what are you doing here?" I asked. She brushed past me like she already lived there. "I wanted to give you time to grieve, but I'm here now because of what your mom promised me." I blinked. "Promised you what?" She gestured at the house, "That you'd look after me. That you'd look after the house." Obviously, she meant for me and the kids to live here. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. "Megan, this is my house," I said slowly. "I don't know what you think she told you, but she was very ill at the end. The will is clear. I inherited everything." Megan's face twisted. "That's not right. She said she'd make sure I was taken care of." "And I'm sorry if she gave you that impression," I said, "but legally and literally, nothing was left to you." She crossed her arms. "Well, I'm not leaving." Oh, she meant it. She ordered her kids out of the car and marched them to my lawn, where they all sat like they were staging a protest. Then she started yelling about how I was stealing her home, how my mother had promised her security, and how I was breaking my dead mother's wishes. This tantrum went on for 3 hours. My neighbors peeked through the blinds. My kids watched from an upstairs window. My wife begged me to call the police. So I did. When officers arrived, they gave Megan multiple chances to leave peacefully. She refused. She insisted she was the true resident and I was the intruder. It didn't help her case that she had no key, no paperwork, no belongings formally inside the house, just a delusional sense of entitlement. When she ignored repeated warnings and tried to shove past one officer to run inside, they arrested her for trespassing. Her kids were picked up by another relative. Megan was bailed out that night, and that's when she went nuclear. She started calling every member of my extended family. She told them I'd stolen her inheritance, that I'd betrayed my mother's dying wishes, that I'd left a grieving mother homeless. Some relatives fell for it, others didn't, but the drama was nonstop. The police even asked me for proof of ownership because Megan insisted she had documentation. I provided the deed, the will, and contact info for my mom's attorney. 10 minutes later, the officers confirmed what I'd been saying from the start. Megan had zero claim. Not an inch, not a nail, not a pebble. Still, she kept harassing us, calling, showing up in the street, sending relatives to reason with me. My kids were on edge. My wife was furious. And the last thing I needed while grieving was someone trying to squat in my house like a deranged pigeon. So now she's facing not just a trespassing charge, but also a harassment one. My lawyer's filing for a restraining order, and yes, I'm getting cameras installed. What stings the most is that she only started showing up when my mom became too weak to think clearly. I don't even know if my mom actually said anything to her or if Megan simply took advantage of a dying woman's confusion. Either way, she tried to twist grief into an opportunity. She expected a free house. Instead, she got handcuffs, charges, and a legal slap she's still whining about. We're finally living in peace again, because Megan can't come within 200 feet without a police escort. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.